people in your life right now who cannot be trusted. They aren't the loud ones, the obvious villains who wear their malice on their sleeves. No, their danger is far more insidious, hidden behind a mask of charm, helpfulness, and a subtle, almost invisible, manipulation. They don't hurt you loudly. They dismantle you quietly, from the inside out. Carl Jung didn't just study the mind. He studied what people hide and made it clear that the most dangerous people are not the loud ones, but the quiet distortions who blend in pretending to care while quietly dismantling you from the inside. This isn't just a psychological strategy. It's a form of quiet subversion. It's why you keep missing the signs, why you keep giving your time, your energy, and your trust to people who were never safe to begin with. Jung made it his life's work to understand not just the persona but the shadow. He believed that people don't show you who they are. They show you what they think will work. You're not dealing with an enemy. You're shaking hands with a performance. Jung laid out 6 patterns, 6 psychological masks, 6 personality types that feel harmless at first but quietly destroy you if you're not awake. 1. The chronic victim. This is the person who never takes responsibility. Everything that happens to them is someone else's fault. They are always suffering, always attacked, always done wrong. On the surface, you feel a natural pull to empathize with them, to help them. You become emotionally invested in their story of constant misfortune, pouring your energy into their recovery. But Jung saw this clearly. When a person lives in a state of permanent victimhood, they are hiding a deep and pervasive manipulation. Their suffering is their currency. By never taking responsibility, they never have to be accountable. They never have to confront their own darkness. The chronic victim uses their pain as a weapon. They guilt trip, they twist reality, and they pull sympathy out of you and turn it into obligation. You're not helping them heal, you end up carrying them. And here's the most difficult truth to accept. They don't want healing. They want control. Jung warned that when someone is always a victim, they have likely fused with their shadow. This is the part of them that thrives on emotional manipulation under the disguise of helplessness. These people will never change because to change would be to lose the only power they have, which is your pity. If you don't distance yourself, you will start to feel guilty for your own well-being, for not being as broken as they are. 2. The charming mirror. Jung called this the persona trap. This is a person who reflects back to you exactly what you want to see. They're agreeable, supportive. They laugh at your jokes, admire your dreams, and validate your insecurities. At first, they feel like your biggest supporter, but slowly you notice something strange. You don't actually know who they are because they're not showing you anything real. They're mirroring you to gain trust. Jung wrote that when a person over-identifies with their persona, they become a mask, and the real self stays hidden, protected, untouched, and unaccountable. This person is dangerous precisely because they feel so safe. What's behind the mask? Nothing. There is no substance, no stability, no consistent values. They are loyal not to you, but to your approval. The moment you stop admiring them, they will either vanish or worse, turn against you. You didn't meet a person. You met your own reflection in their performance. Trusting them is like trying to shake hands with smoke. 3. The passive-aggressive enabler. This type is subtle. They don't openly criticize or fight you directly. Instead, they let you speak and then suggest, hint, and undermine. They are the quiet saboteurs who clip your wings before you can ever take flight, and then have the audacity to call it support. You'll share a dream or an idea, and this person will nod, but later say something like, "That's ambitious. I just don't want you to be disappointed," or, "You're so brave for trying that. I don't think I'd ever risk failing like that." It sounds supportive, but it isn't. Jung described this dynamic as the hidden shadow of the helper. These people don't attack your decisions. They slowly erode your confidence through emotional suggestion. They present doubt as concern, fear as logic, and judgment as maturity. And if you're not conscious, you'll internalize their limitations as your own. Jung believed this type is especially dangerous because they pretend to empower you while quietly making sure you never outgrow them. Because if you succeed without them, they lose their invisible grip and relevance. For the enabler, that's a silent ego death. For the secret competitor, this person isn't competing with the world. They're competing with you, but not openly. They pretend to be your friend and applaud your success. They act like they're happy for you, but every time something good happens for you, they find a way to make it about them. They minimize it, redirect the attention, or tell their own story, one that is slightly better and more impressive. Jung believed this type is driven by unconscious inferiority. They don't hate you. They resent what you reflect back at them, which is their own inadequacy. Instead of owning that feeling and growing from it, they compete secretly. They copy your ideas and pretend they were theirs, and they offer backhanded compliments. They only celebrate you when they're ahead, never when you're above. You feel it in the tension, in the forced praise, in the subtle shifts. And if you ignore it, you'll keep pouring trust into someone who sees you as a threat, not a friend. And here is the most brutal twist. When you fail, they'll feel relief, but they won't say it. They'll just say, "I was afraid this might happen. I tried to warn you." This person is not a teammate. They are a mirror competitor who plays the role of support just to stay close enough to emotionally sabotage you. Jung warned, never trust someone who can't clap when it's not their turn to win. For out of 6 types have been revealed. Each one is more subtle than the last, and each one becomes more dangerous the longer they go undetected. We will now expose the final 2. The spiritual narcissist and the seductive empath who hides control under compassion. Jung believed these 2 were the hardest to spot because they often appear wise, helpful, or even healing. They don't control you through force. They control you through your need for love, growth, or clarity. 5. The spiritual narcissist, or the manipulative wise one. This is the person who presents themselves as enlightened, mature, grounded, and emotionally advanced. They speak softly, quoting philosophy and referencing healing, alignment, shadow work, and mindfulness. They present themselves as being above conflict and ego, but in truth, they're deeply attached to being seen as superior. Jung would call this a split psyche, where the conscious mind clings to a spiritual identity, while the unconscious shadow leaks out as quiet superiority, control, and judgment. The danger is that they don't dominate you by arguing. They dominate you by always being the calm one, making you feel emotional, unhealed, or spiritually inferior anytime you push back. They say things like, "Sounds like a trigger you haven't dealt with yet," or "It's not my responsibility to fix your projection." Sounds wise, but it's really a power play. They use emotional language to invalidate your reality. You can't win an argument because they'll never admit to one. You can't confront them because they'll reframe your anger as a flaw in you. Jung warned about this especially because the wise one often builds their persona out of unintegrated ego. They didn't kill their ego. They just gave it robes and crystals. They buried it under concepts and called it transcendence. And the more you trust them to guide you, the more power they gain. Not by helping you grow, but by keeping you small, confused, and always needing their clarity. They don't want equals. They want students. They don't want healing. They want authority. If you're not careful, you'll mistake their emotional stillness for depth, when in fact it's just performance. 6. The empathic controller. Jung wrote often about projection, how people assign their own needs, wounds, and intentions onto others unconsciously. The 6th type is a master of this, the empathic controller. They feel everything. They sense energy. They pick up on moods, body language, tension, and subtext. They cry easily and comfort you often. They make you feel deeply seen. At first, this seems like a gift and feels like a connection. But over time, it becomes something else. Control through sensitivity. You start adjusting your behavior so you don't disturb them. You suppress your reactions so you don't hurt them. Before you realize it, you're not expressing yourself at all. You're managing them because they've convinced you their pain is your fault. Jung warned that many people who claim to be highly sensitive are actually projecting unhealed chaos outward and demanding the world organize itself around their wounds. This is where the empath becomes toxic. They don't want connection. They want emotional safety at your expense. And if you fail to meet it, they break down and you become the bad guy. Suddenly, you're insensitive, cold, or unstable, and you're responsible for their spiral. But it's not your spiral. It's theirs, and they've never learned to hold it, so they place it on you. You'll spend months, even years, trying to regulate someone who never took responsibility for themselves. You'll mistake their emotional chaos for depth and their sensitivity for purity. You'll mistake their control for closeness. And by the time you realize it, your identity will be wrapped around someone else's emotional storm. That's not love. That's psychological submission. Jung's advice is to walk away, because this kind of person will never say they're dangerous. They'll say they're just feeling too much. And unless you are deeply rooted in yourself, you will start to believe them. You'll believe their pain is your fault, their chaos is your burden, and their breakdowns are your responsibility. But they are not. You didn't break them, you just got too close. Now that you have heard all 6 types, you might ask, why do these people exist? Why do they move this way? And Jung's answer is brutally clear. Because they never met their shadow. So now they make you carry it. They never faced the part of them that's manipulative, so they project it onto you. They never admitted their need for control, so they control people in the name of love, support, or guidance. They never took responsibility for their pain, so they made it your job to fix. These people aren't rare. They're everywhere. And they thrive in spaces where people don't know how to defend their energy. Jung believed the only protection was self-awareness. It is the ability to spot the mask, to see through the kindness, to hear what's not being said, and to walk away before you need proof. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. This is not a moral failure. It is a psychic pattern, a survival system of the unconscious trying to hold itself together by externalizing pain, control, and emotional confusion. If you don't recognize this pattern, you'll think it's just bad luck. You'll think you keep attracting bad people. You'll think you're being punished. But Jung would say, you're not being punished. You're being mirrored. And here is the real warning most people miss. You attract what you haven't integrated. Let that sink in. If you're always attracting manipulators, there's a part of you that's still afraid to stand in your own truth. If you're always surrounded by victims, there's a part of you that needs to be needed in order to feel valuable. If you're constantly betrayed by charming people, you're still worshiping external approval more than internal clarity. This is why this message isn't just about who to avoid. It's about why you tolerated them in the first place. And Jung believed the answer always lives in one place, your shadow. The shadow attracts the mask. Jung taught that the shadow is everything you've repressed. It's the parts of you were told were too much, too selfish, too intense, or not lovable. So you buried them. You became nice, you became helpful, you became agreeable, you became emotionally intelligent. You became whatever would get you accepted. But here's the trade-off, and it's a brutal one. You lost your edge, your instincts, and your barrier to harm. Because when you repress your anger, you tolerate disrespect. When you repress your intuition, you ignore red flags. When you repress your self-protection, you keep letting in the people who pretend to love you and then slowly consume you. Jung didn't want you to become cold. He wanted you to become whole. To do that, you have to stop pretending that your love is limitless, that your patience is eternal, and that your trust should be freely given, because it shouldn't be. Not everyone deserves access to you, especially not the people who live unconsciously. And here is the brutal truth about these unconscious people. Some people are not learning. They're just repeating. They've been the same for 10 years. They're not doing shadow work or evolving with you. They're just adapting their language to hide their same old patterns. And unless you become the kind of person who values inner alignment over outer harmony, you will keep bending for people who wouldn't stretch an inch for you. You will continue to sacrifice your truth on the altar of their comfort. If this video hit you hard, good. It means something in you is waking up. It means you're done being easy to manipulate. It means the old version of you, the one who needed to be liked, needed to fix, needed to feel good, is finally tired. So here's how you move forward. How you begin the process of becoming impossible to trick. 1. Audit your circle. Start asking, who drains me? Who confuses me? Who am I constantly explaining myself to? If someone constantly needs context just to treat you right, they're not confused. They're avoiding accountability. Let them go silently without guilt. Jung believed withdrawal is one of the strongest acts of consciousness. Not because you hate them, but because you've stopped abandoning yourself to keep the peace. 2. Let your shadow speak. Stop trying to be perfect. Let yourself say no. Let yourself get angry. Let yourself question people's intentions. Your shadow isn't evil. It's protective. It's the part of you that remembers who you are when you're being emotionally gaslit into forgetting. Let that part rise. Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." If you want peace, stop performing for it. Integrate the part of you that can walk away, that can set a boundary, that can say, "I'm not available for this anymore." 3. Stop explaining. The people who deserve your energy won't need you to justify your boundaries. They'll feel them, they'll respect them, and they'll match you with their own clarity. But the toxic ones, they'll demand explanations. They'll guilt-trip you and paint you as the problem. Let them. Jung didn't believe in convincing unconscious people to see your light. He believed in becoming so grounded in yourself that their confusion no longer slows you down. For trust what you felt the first time. Most people aren't confused. They're just hoping they're wrong. But you weren't. That moment you felt the energy shift, that moment you hesitated before trusting, that moment your gut said something's off here, that wasn't paranoia. That was your subconscious reading patterns before your mind caught up. Start listening to it. Because the people Jung warned us about don't show up with warning signs. They show up with flattery, with emotional stories, and with alignment and vulnerability and healing talk. But time always tells. And when it does, you better be far enough away that it no longer costs you anything. The final word. Carl Jung didn't want you to fear the world. He wanted you to stop fearing your own knowing. The more shadow you integrate, the fewer toxic people will get close to you. This isn't because you're hiding, but because your energy no longer gives them entry. You stop explaining, you stop fixing, and you stop justifying your standards. And without ever raising your voice, you become someone no manipulator can reach, no narcissist can fool, no competitor can rattle. Because you are now the person Jung wanted you to be, awake, whole, and impossible to trick. The 6 types we've discussed, the chronic victim, the charming mirror, the passive-aggressive enabler, the secret competitor, the spiritual narcissist, and the empathic controller, don't always come to destroy you. They come to feed from you. This isn't a moral failure. It's a psychic pattern, a survival system of the unconscious trying to hold itself together by externalizing pain, control, and emotional confusion. And if you don't recognize the pattern, you'll think it's just bad luck. You'll think you keep attracting bad people or that you're being punished. But Jung would say, you're not being punished. You're being mirrored. Remember this, you attract what you haven't integrated. When you embrace your anger, you build a boundary. When you listen to your intuition, you protect yourself from harm. When you accept your own darkness, you stop carrying the shadows of others. This is the ultimate path to freedom, not from the world, but from the unconscious patterns that have kept you trapped. When you finally stop trying to be nice at the expense of being real, you will find that the people who see your worth will naturally gravitate towards you. And the people who don't will no longer be able to reach you, because you will have become truly grounded in yourself. Your presence will be proof enough.